What would you do if you found out your own family stole the inheritance promised to you since childhood? This isn't fiction. It's my real story. It began with the smell of cinnamon in my grandmother's kitchen and ended in a glass-walled conference room where I confronted my parents over $5 million they secretly funneled to my sister. The truth no one tells you is this: betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. It can wear a familiar smile. I'm Claire Morgan, now a graduate in educational psychology from Columbia, and I was forced to sue my parents just to protect the legacy my grandmother built for me. In this video, you'll learn how I uncovered the theft, how I fought back without losing myself, and the moment my sister showed up pregnant, alone, and finally honest. I once lived off lentils and almond butter while watching my sister flash a 3-carat ring-tagged number gift from Mom and Dad, but I didn't stay silent, and because of that, I reclaimed more than money. I reclaimed my dignity. If you've ever been dismissed just because you were the strong one, this story is for you, because sometimes fighting back doesn't break a family, it saves your soul. Before we dive into the story, let's connect. Have you ever felt stuck, searching for the depths of manifestation? Drop a 3 in the comments if you're ready to unlock your true potential, or a 4 if you're still finding your way. Let's start this journey together. I never really thought of cinnamon as a scent until I realized it was the smell of safety. In my grandmother's kitchen that fall, it clung to everything. Wooden drawers, the hem of her apron, and even the sleeves of my sweatshirt when I hugged her goodbye. That kitchen, with its worn linoleum floor and cabinets painted a faded shade of mint, was the place where my world made the most sense. I was 12, the kind of 12-year-old who already preferred planning over surprises. My little sister, Sophie, was 10, and though we shared a room, we might as well have lived on different planets. She was sunshine in sneakers, always bouncing, always smiling, and always the center of attention. I loved her. I really did. But sometimes I envied how easily people bent toward her light. That afternoon, I was elbow deep in cookie dough, rolling sugar into small glass bowls, while Grandma Rose shaped each piece with her quick, practiced hands. Sophie sat in the living room, glued to a rerun of some talent show, her laughter echoing down the hallway. I didn't complain. I never did. Helping Grandma felt like an honor, not a chore. "You've got steady hands, Claire," Grandma said, glancing over her bifocals. "Good hands make good futures." I smiled, proud. I didn't need the compliment out loud, but it still felt good. Sophie giggled from the other room and called out, "Grandma, can I have a cookie now?" Grandma chuckled. "Tell you what, sweetheart, once they're out of the oven." She turned back to me and lowered her voice just a touch. "That one knows how to get what she wants with a grin. You'll get what you want because you work for it." Later that evening, we sat down to dinner in the formal dining room, the kind we rarely used, where the good plates came out and the chandelier flickered with warm light. My parents, Richard and Laura, both in suits and the tired kind of silence that working long hours brings, had just poured their wine when Grandma clinked her glass. "I have an announcement," she said, standing with a grace that came from decades of running her own business. "As you know, I've been setting aside funds for the girls' education. Today it's official. I've created 2 trusts, $2.5 million each, for Claire and Sophie." Forks paused mid-air. My mother gasped softly. My father raised his glass. "Mom, that's incredibly generous," he said, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Surprise? Maybe worry. Sophie squealed. "Wait, does that mean I can go to college anywhere? Like Paris?" "Anywhere," Grandma said with a nod, "as long as you use it for your mind, not your wardrobe." Everyone laughed, even me. But somewhere beneath that laughter, something shifted. I felt a quiet bloom of hope inside me, as though someone had finally drawn a map of the future I'd always wanted. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the grown-ups had moved to the living room for coffee, Grandma pulled me aside. She walked me to her study, the one lined with dusty books and smelling faintly of cedar and ink. From the shelf, she took down a worn copy of The Little Prince and pressed it into my hands. "This is for your mind," she said gently. "And the fund? That's for your future. Use both wisely." I nodded, too full to speak. On the way home, in the car, Sophie chattered about art school and studying fashion design abroad. My parents listened, offering mild encouragement, but I noticed my mother's eyes in the rearview mirror lingered longer on Sophie. The next day, back at Grandma's house for Sunday lunch, I watched as Sophie knocked a ceramic plate off the counter. It shattered across the tile. "I didn't mean to," she cried. Grandma came in from the hallway just as my mother reached for a broom. "Oh, honey," Mom said, crouching beside her. "It's okay." 5 minutes later, Sophie was licking frosting off a cupcake. Meanwhile, when I asked Sophie to help me carry cups to the table, she shrugged and wandered off. I turned to my father. "She should help, too," I said. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Claire, don't be bossy." That word stuck to me like burrs. Bossy. Not assertive, not responsible. Bossy. I swallowed my protest. Grandma caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod, like she'd seen it all and already filed it away. After lunch, as I packed away leftover lasagna into plastic containers, Grandma found me in the kitchen. "Don't ever let them tell you what you can or can't become," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "Promise me, Claire." I looked at her then, really looked, at the fine lines around her eyes, the quiet strength in her shoulders, the soft creases on her palms. I could feel her hope resting in my chest, like something fragile and electric. "I promise," I said, and I meant it. But even then, I had no idea how much that promise would cost me. By spring, the heat in my fifth-floor apartment arrived before the sun ever did. The old building groaned through the pipes each morning, and the tiny window unit wheezed like it knew it was losing the fight. I was down to 3 eggs, a bag of lentils, and the last of the almond butter, but all I could think about was tuition. I sat on my creaky futon, staring at the acceptance email from Columbia's graduate program in educational psychology. I had read it 5 times already, but it still didn't feel real. I was 25, about to finish my undergrad at New York University, and had done everything by the book, working part-time, applying for grants, living cheap. Now I was staring at the next step, and it was going to cost me a lot. I called my mom the moment I got the official packet in the mail. "Columbia said the deposit's due in 6 weeks," I said. "I'm going to need access to the trust fund soon." There was a pause. "That's wonderful news, sweetheart. I'm not surprised at all. You've always been so focused." I waited. "Can we meet with the bank next week?" "Oh, well, your father handles most of that. Let me check his calendar and call you back." She never did. Over the next week, I juggled classes, wrote a paper on adolescent development, and kept checking my phone like a reflex. Still nothing. When I finally called again, Dad answered. "Emma, wait, no, Claire. Sorry, I've had back-to-back meetings all day. Listen, we're working on some paperwork with the bank. Disbursements have been slow lately, bureaucracy, you know how it is." Something about the way he said it, rushed, dismissive, left a pit in my stomach. I didn't argue. I never argued, not with him. A few nights later, I got a group text from Sophie. Sophie Morgan. Guess who said yes? Attached was a photo of her left hand, perfectly manicured, tipped slightly to highlight the sparkle of an emerald-cut diamond. 3 carats, maybe more. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. It didn't look like a ring you pick up on impulse. It looked like a statement. I typed, then deleted. Where did Logan get the money for that? Instead, I sent, "Congrats." Maya and I sat on the stoop outside our building that weekend, sharing a bag of pretzels from the corner deli. "She's what, 23? Maya asked. "Almost 24, I replied. "And Logan's that guy who quit his finance job to launch an app for what again?" "Grocery subscriptions, I think, or maybe online florists." Maya raised an eyebrow. "So he's unemployed." I shrugged. Sophie says he's found his vision. That night, I scrolled through Sophie's Instagram. Her feed was a curated fantasy: sunlit brunches, rooftop wine tastings, Pilates sessions, filtered selfies. Then I saw it. A boomerang of her and Logan clinking glasses on a balcony overlooking Lake Como. The caption read, "Engagement Surprise Trip. Thank you, Mom and Dad," with the hashtag #GeechGift from MoManDad. My stomach twisted. Just last week, I had argued with the pharmacist over my copay. I checked the calendar and did some mental math. Sophie's new apartment, the car she got last fall, the ring, now this trip, all in the span of 10 months. Logan wasn't rich. My parents weren't lottery winners. So where was the money coming from? The next morning, I took the train back to Greenwich and walked into the First Horizon Bank branch, just a few blocks from the home I'd grown up in. "Hi," I said to the receptionist, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Claire Morgan. I'm listed as a beneficiary on an education trust established by my grandmother, Rose Whitaker. I'd like to request a meeting with someone about accessing funds for graduate school." The woman smiled politely and typed something into her screen. "Unfortunately, Ms. Morgan, without both co-trustees present, we can't disclose account specifics. You'd need to come back with one or both of them to proceed." "But I'm 25, I said. "I've withdrawn funds before for tuition." "Yes, small pre-approved amounts. Anything larger requires trustee authorization." I nodded slowly, lips pressed together. "Thanks." Outside, I stood on the sidewalk with my phone in hand, watching emails pile up. Course reminders, job board alerts, a message from NYU's financial office. Everything normal, except it wasn't. Later that evening, Maya brought over a cheap bottle of wine and sat on my floor while I reheated the last of the lentils. "I don't want to jump to conclusions," I said, stirring the pot, "but something's off." "You think they touched the fund?" "I don't know. I hope not, but the timing, it's just too perfect. Everything Sophie's getting lines up with when my requests started getting delayed." Maya sipped her wine. Would they really do that? I thought about Grandma Rose's words. Some people need to be carried through life. You, Claire, have legs of steel. She never said Sophie's name, but I knew who she meant. "I don't think they forgot to call the bank," I whispered. "They're hiding something." And suddenly, the silence from my parents didn't feel like forgetfulness. It felt like strategy. The smell of thyme and lemon roasted chicken used to make me feel at home. It was the scent of Sunday evenings, predictable, warm, a signal that the week would end with linen napkins and polished silverware. But this time, the air in the Morgan dining room felt stale, like the scent was only a performance. I had brought something far less appetizing to the table. We were all there. My parents, Richard and Laura, sitting at either end of the table like bookends. Sophie and Logan were across from me, holding hands and whispering between bites. The engagement ring sparkled under the chandelier, catching light like a spotlight no one asked for. Logan wore an expensive-looking watch and the kind of smirk you see in startup pitch decks. I tried to tune it out, focusing instead on my water glass, the condensation sliding down my fingers. I had folded the printout from First Horizon into quarters and tucked it beneath my cloth napkin. It was a list of every withdrawal from the trust fund over the past 2 years, and I had memorized every line, every date, every dollar. Laura poured the wine like nothing was wrong, like her world hadn't tilted even a little. "Sophie, darling, tell us again about the vineyard venue." "Oh, so Logan and I toured 3 places last weekend," Sophie began, her voice light as a meringue. "But this one in Napa had the most gorgeous pergola. I could see the flowers already." "Sounds lovely," Dad said, adjusting his cufflink. "Just make sure there's room for the jazz trio." I waded through the salad, through the chicken, through the side conversation about Logan's newest partnership opportunity. And then, just as dessert, raspberry tart with fresh whipped cream was being served. I placed my folded document on the table. "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next." But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. Before we eat, I have a question, I said, voice level. How much is left in my trust fund? Forks paused. Sophie looked confused, then bored. Logan blinked. My father reached for his wine. Claire, is this really the time? Yes, I said. My mother set down her spoon. Sweetheart, can't we just enjoy dinner? I unfolded the paper. Withdrawals totaling over $1.8 million, I read. Over the last 24 months, transferred to 2 accounts. One joint, one belonging solely to Sophie. Silence swallowed the room. Even the ticking wall clock felt louder. Sophie's eyebrows lifted, but she didn't speak. Logan shifted uncomfortably, his thumb tracing the edge of his napkin. Claire, where did you get that? My father asked. Mr. Kessler, the bank manager. He couldn't give me much, but this... I slid the paper across the table. This is public, and what's more, I'm the beneficiary. I had a right to know. Mom clasped her hands. We were going to talk to you. When? I snapped. Before or after the destination wedding, or maybe after Logan's next round of seed funding? Dad leaned forward. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed. Dramatic would be throwing the tart across the table. I'm asking you to explain how Grandma's educational trust was drained to fund a Chelsea apartment, a ring, and a vacation in Lake Como. Sophie finally spoke, her tone defensive. I didn't ask for the money. They offered. And you accepted. It's not like you didn't get help, too, she muttered. Your NYU tuition was partial scholarship, I shot back, and the rest came from my job and whatever I could withdraw with permission. You think Columbia's going to accept IOUs from Logan's future app? My mother's voice broke in. Claire, please, this isn't healthy. You're letting resentment color everything. This isn't resentment, I said. It's math, it's Grandma's legacy, and it's betrayal. Dad pushed his plate aside. You're either with this family or you're against it. I felt something cold settle in my spine. You already made that choice for me. No one moved, not even Sophie, who looked down at her lap as if hoping to disappear into the linen tablecloth. Logan opened his mouth but said nothing. I stood, pushing my chair back gently, deliberately. I came here hoping for honesty, I said, but all I got was silence wrapped in silverware. I walked past the hallway photo, one from when I was 14, in braces and a too big sweater, squeezed between my sister and parents. We all looked happy. That kind of snapshot lies so easily. No one called after me. Not one word. Outside, the air was still warm, but I wrapped my cardigan tighter around myself as I walked to the car. The lights from the dining room glowed behind me, soft and golden, like everything inside was still normal. But nothing would ever be again. The letterhead from First Horizon Bank looked official, but it was the voice on the other end of the line that shook me more than the words on the page. Ms. Morgan, this is Daniel Kessler. I've reviewed your grandmother's trust documents in full, he said. There are clawback and breach clauses, significant ones. Your parents didn't just misuse the funds. According to the trust's language, they violated its core purpose. I let that sink in. Grandma Rose had built safeguards, quiet, careful walls around her gift to me, and my parents had climbed over every one of them. Claire, Mr. Kessler continued, his voice gentler now, you're not powerless here. I had to sit down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I read through the trust documents Mr. Kessler had sent, every line highlighted, every clause annotated. It felt like parsing an entirely new language, one where betrayal could be measured in subsections and notarized signatures. Maya showed up the next morning with 2 bagels and an iced coffee. You look like you slept inside a photocopier, she said. Feels about right. I told her everything. The call, the documents, the possibility of clawing back what was lost. So what's next? She asked, tearing into her sesame bagel. I need a lawyer, a real one. Jasmine Carter's office was on the 24th floor of a glass tower in Midtown. She met me in a navy pantsuit and low heels, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her tone all business. But there was something behind her eyes, a kind of knowing, that made me feel like I'd stepped into the right room. "I reviewed the documents Mr. Kessler forwarded," she said after we sat. "Your grandmother was meticulous. The trust clearly limits spending to educational purposes. Any personal use outside that scope is a breach." I nodded. "There's a clause empowering the beneficiary, meaning you, to initiate recovery proceedings if mismanagement occurs." "Recovery?" I repeated. "You mean I can sue my parents?" "Not necessarily. Not yet. We begin with a formal demand for full accounting and restitution. They have 30 days to respond. If they don't comply, we escalate." She paused. "I need you to understand something, Claire. They will come after you, not just legally, but emotionally. Guilt, manipulation, public narratives. You'll be cast as the ungrateful daughter. Are you ready for that?" I wasn't, but I said yes anyway. The legal notice went out that Friday. I watched Jasmine's paralegal slide the envelope into the FedEx sleeve and seal it shut. The sound was unremarkable, but it hit like a gavel. That weekend, the first voicemail came, my mother's voice soft and shaking. "Claire, honey, what is this? A letter from a law office? Can we please talk? You don't have to do this." Then Dad, more clipped. "This is completely unnecessary. You're making a mistake you can't take back. We've supported you for years." I didn't answer. I saved every message. Sophie took to Instagram, a photo of her holding a mimosa captioned, "Some people just can't handle joy." I didn't need to be tagged to know who it was for. Maya sent me a screenshot with the message, "Subtle." I turned my phone face down. That week, I buried myself in classwork and paperwork. I filed FAFSA as a backup. I dug through receipts and calendars, matching every expense I'd paid myself against what I now knew had disappeared behind closed doors. The silence from my parents turned from pleading to pressure. Then came the email from their attorney, formal, cool, and full of legalese. They wanted to settle. Not admit fault, just settle. Jasmine read it over, then leaned back in her chair. "They're going to play nice now. Say it was a misunderstanding. Offered just enough to make you question if pushing further is worth it." "Is it?" She looked me dead in the eye. "That depends. Do you want peace, or do you want justice?" I sat with that question long after I left her office. That night, I stood by the window in my studio apartment, watching the city hum below me. I thought of Grandma Rose, her steady hands shaping cookie dough, her voice low and certain. "Don't rely on people who say they love you. Rely on the ones who leave proof." She had, and now I had to decide what to do with it. "They'll play nice," Jasmine had said, "but they'll come armed, with guilt, with spin, with tears made for effect. I wasn't a soldier. I didn't want war. But I wanted the truth to mean something. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to be the kind of person who didn't back down when something sacred had been stolen." The countdown had begun. 30 days. The conference room in White Plains could have been anywhere. Glass walls, pale gray carpet, a long, sleek table in the center, surrounded by 2 comfortable chairs. Everything smelled faintly of lemons and filtered air, like the building was trying too hard to pretend emotions didn't exist inside it. Jasmine and I arrived 10 minutes early. She carried only a slim black folder, her heels tapping a quiet rhythm on the tile. I carried nothing, just the list, printed and folded in my coat pocket, and my resolve, which I was holding like a glass of water I couldn't afford to spill. "They'll try to set the tone with small talk," Jasmine said as we waited. "Don't engage, just stay calm." I nodded, palms flat against my skirt to stop them from fidgeting. The door opened, and my parents walked in. Dad looked older than I remembered, but it was hard to tell if it was stress or lighting. His tie was perfectly knotted, his hair combed in that careful way he reserved for board meetings. Mom wore pearl earrings and a scarf I remembered from Paris, the trip she and Sophie had taken 2 years ago when I was pulling double shifts at the campus library. They didn't say hello. Their attorney, a man named Bradley Collins, introduced himself with a smile that didn't quite touch his eyes. "Shall we begin?" We sat. I kept my eyes on Jasmine as she opened the meeting with a summary of our demands: full restitution of misappropriated trust funds, including interest and legal fees. No negotiation on the trust's intent, no reduction due to familial support. Just what was meant to be mine. Dad leaned forward first. "We're prepared to offer Claire $100,000, he said, immediately, in good faith. But the remainder, much of that was spent supporting both our daughters. That should count for something." Jasmine didn't blink. "The trust doesn't mention parental discretion, only educational use, and only for Claire Morgan. There is no clause allowing equal distribution." Mom shifted in her seat. "Claire," she said gently, "you've always been the strong one. You didn't need help the way Sophie did. She was struggling, finding her way. We were just trying to make things easier for her." I looked at her, wondering how many times she had rehearsed that line. "And you made things harder for me," I said, voice level. "You didn't just move the finish line, you cut the track out from under me." Bradley cleared his throat. "Let's not conflate emotional grievances with fiduciary responsibilities." "Oh, let's," I said, pulling the folded list from my coat and sliding it across the table. "Because this isn't just numbers. This is intention, and every dollar misused tells a story." Jasmine leaned in slightly. "Claire has prepared an itemized breakdown of the trust withdrawals correlated with purchases and expenses attributed to Sophie's lifestyle and Logan's business ventures. These include a BMW lease, a 6-month rental in Chelsea, a 3-carat ring, a 10-day European engagement trip, and 2 separate transfers totaling $40,000 labeled as startup capital." Dad's jaw tightened. "We were helping our family." "You were helping yourselves feel better," I said. "Grandma didn't work 3 jobs and build a business from nothing so Sophie could post unboxing videos of espresso machines." The door swung open behind me. Sophie entered. Late. Of course. She wore designer sunglasses on her head and a trench coat that looked straight off a runway. She didn't apologize for the interruption, just slid into the chair next to Mom and crossed her arms. "I heard you're trying to ruin my life," she said, smiling like it was a joke. I didn't answer. Bradley addressed her without looking. "Ms. Morgan, we're currently in a negotiation session. If you have input, I suggest you keep it measured." Sophie scoffed. "Sure. Let's measure how much Claire's little pity party is costing everyone." Mom placed a hand on her arm. "Sophie, no," Sophie snapped. "I'm sick of pretending she's the victim. She got into NYU. She's going to Columbia. But suddenly she's poor and betrayed? Please." My hands curled into fists under the table. "I want you to live within your means," I said, finally turning to her. "That's what Grandma wanted for me. That's what she planned for." "And what?" Sophie said, her voice rising. "You want me to live in shame while you get your fancy degree and sit on some panel about family trauma? How convenient." "This isn't about shame," I said. "It's about responsibility." She laughed bitterly. "Oh, responsibility, of course. Because you've always been the responsible one, right? The one who makes the lists, the one who follows the rules. What does that make me, Claire? The charity case?" "No," I said quietly. "You're the beneficiary of other people's silence." The air in the room shifted. Dad stood up, suddenly flushed. "This is enough. This is tearing the family apart. Claire, if you care about any of us, you'll walk this back. We can fix it privately, quietly." I stood too. "I cared," I said, "for years. But while I was busy caring, you were busy spending. You don't get to demand loyalty when you've burned trust." Jasmine gently touched my elbow, signaling to sit. I remained standing. "I'm not the villain here," I said. "I'm the only one still honoring her." No one spoke after that, Not Dad, not Mom, not even Sophie. The silence felt thick, full of something sharp and unfinished. We adjourned shortly after. No handshakes. In the hallway, as Jasmine packed her folder, she leaned close. "They'll cave," she said softly, "but they'll never look at you the same again." I nodded. I'm not sure I ever looked at them the same either. Outside, the sun was still shining, but I couldn't feel its warmth. Inside me, something had split, not broken, just redefined. And sometimes that's how freedom begins, quietly, on the other side of a glass table. The snow that morning came soft and slow, the kind that lingers on scarves and glitters in hair. Columbia's campus was hushed, the usual rush of footsteps muffled beneath a thin white blanket. I stood on the steps of Low Library, gown zipped tight over my sweater, diploma in hand. The air was cold but kind. Maya found me first. "You did it," she whispered, her eyes bright with something deeper than celebration. "Your grandma would have... No, she is proud." We hugged, tight, the kind of hug that doesn't rush, that says everything without needing to. Aunt Helen joined us moments later, wrapped in her usual tweed coat, holding a bouquet of winter lilies. She didn't say much, she never did, but her presence had always been a steady light in the mess of everything. "I never doubted you," she said quietly, "and I'm glad you didn't either." The ceremony was brief. Speeches came and went. Applause rose and faded. I sat still through most of it, eyes drawn not to the stage but to the empty chairs where my parents might have been. I had left space for them in my mind, just in case. But silence, I'd learned, makes a louder guest than anger ever could. That evening, as I peeled off the gown and hung it carefully in the closet, my phone buzzed. The caller ID was my aunt again. "Claire," she said, voice heavier this time, "I wanted you to hear it from me. Your grandfather passed this morning. The service is Friday in Greenwich." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full of decision. "Thank you," I said. "I'll think about it." And I did. For 2 days, I wrestled with the idea of returning to that house, of walking through rooms where words had been both weapons and whispers. But in the end, I packed a black dress and bought a train ticket. The chapel was modest, white stone, simple wooden pews. I arrived alone and sat near the back. The Morgan family occupied the front row. Dad turned just enough to meet my eyes and offered a short nod. Mom kept her gaze forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I didn't expect more. I didn't need more. The service moved in gentle rhythms. Hymns, a few spoken memories, the pastor's eulogy. I felt sadness, but not grief. My grandfather had been quiet in my life, a presence more than a participant. Still, closure has many forms, and this felt like one of them. It wasn't until the final song ended that I saw Sophie. She stood near the back, one hand resting on her rounded belly, the other wrapped around a pale blue scarf. She looked tired. Not dramatic, not camera-ready, just real. When the crowd began to file out, she waited until we were alone in the aisle. "Hey," she said. I blinked, unsure what to expect. "Logan's gone," she added, voice low. "He left 6 months ago. The baby's due in March." I nodded, unsure if I should offer sympathy or just silence. "I didn't come to make a scene," she said. "I just wanted to say I get it now. Not everything, but enough." I looked at her, really looked. "I don't want you to fail, Sophie," I said softly. "I never did, but I can't unsee what happened." She nodded. "I don't blame you." We didn't hug. We didn't promise to stay in touch. But something shifted. The frost between us didn't melt, but it stopped growing. Later, I walked alone to the cemetery behind the chapel. Snow still fell, finer now, like sugar over the stone paths. Rose's grave was tucked near the back, marked by a granite headstone and a small bed of winter pansies someone had tended to. I knelt, brushing snow from the letters. Rose Whitaker. Beloved mother, grandmother, protector. "I wish you could have seen it, Grandma," I whispered. "Columbia, the diploma, the way your grant helped more than just me. I reached into my coat and pulled out the white tulips I'd carried since morning. You protected me, I said, laying them gently at her grave, even when I didn't know I needed it. And just like that, something loosened in my chest, not gone, but lighter. The train ride back to the city was quiet. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur into white hills, my reflection soft in the glass. When I checked my email, a new message waited in bold. Subject: Expansion Opportunity. Rose Whitaker, Educational Grant. Dear Claire, we're reaching out to share exciting news. Our board has approved additional funding to expand the grant next year. We'd love to schedule a call and discuss how you'd like to shape its future. I smiled. They had taken the money, they had taken the support, but they couldn't take what I rebuilt. And they couldn't touch what I chose to carry forward. Not bitterness, not resentment, just legacy, and the quiet kind of peace that grows when you plant something new. As the snow settled outside the train window, I realized something simple but lasting. What I carried forward mattered more than what had been taken. Grandma Rose didn't just leave behind money. She left me with a sense of dignity no one could steal. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is accepting that peace may not look like reconciliation, but choosing integrity, even in loneliness, is its own quiet kind of love. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a lesson, or a moment of quiet strength, I'd be honored to hear it. Feel free to share your thoughts or just sit with them a while. Thank you for listening.